Music festivals. When they're done right, they can be some of the most fun, incredible, and euphoric experiences of your lifetime. Spending a few days outside in a field somewhere, seeing the biggest performances of your life while you're wasted, it's fantastic. But sometimes music festivals aren't done right. Sometimes, due to negligence, incompetence, corruption, criminals, or even just freak acts of nature, music festivals can turn into horrifying, traumatic experiences that could scar you for the rest of your life. Whether it's collapsing stages, violent riots breaking out, festivals being complete scams, or hippies, there are many ways a music festival can go horribly wrong, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. The 10 worst music festival disasters of all time. Some of these you probably know already, and some of them are brand new, having taken place just this year. But all around, these are all pretty insane fuck-ups, so if you want to start a music festival and you're watching this video, here's a list of things to not do. Headbang the like button, stage dive onto the subscribe button, and windmill the video to your friends. And if you're a fan of this channel, consider becoming a member. Memberships start at only 99 cents a month, and each one really helps me toward my goal of world domination. And with that said, let's talk about the 10 worst music festival disasters of all time. Number 10, Glastonbury 1990, the Battle of Yeoman's Bridge. I actually hadn't heard of this one till I started working on this video, and holy shit, it's one of the funniest things I've ever heard of. Glastonbury is one of the biggest music and arts festival in the UK. Every year it features a very not metal lineup with a bunch of mainstream and alternative artists that I've never heard of. It's a big celebration of peace and love and flowers and all that hippie shit, which is what makes this story so ironically hilarious. You see, there was this large group of gypsies back in the day called New Age Travelers, a ramshackle tribe of environmental activists, anarchists, hedonists, and dropouts who traversed Britain in old diesel vans and buses, also known as bums. And in 1990, the organizers of Glastonbury decided out of genuine kindness of their hearts to allow hundreds of these bums to camp for free right next to the festival for its entire duration. Sounds nice, right? Well, it went horribly wrong. Apparently, hippies and gypsies don't mix well. Who knew? You see, the travelers felt that they were free to rob and attack the actual festival attendees, and they smelled. They'd trash the environment, bring in the bad kind of drugs, and often clash with event security and police.
Oh, come on! Move now, or you're going to get all your vehicles moved on. So what, that isn't pressure? That's not pressure.
That is because you're obstructing the highway, which is a power I've got to deal with. I cannot speak to this news because it's got nothing to do with
We're
me,
obstructing
and
the
that's a
road.
civil
Where
matter.
do we go then?
Get a job, sir!
It got so bad several cars got set on fire as the new festival drink of the day quickly became Molotov cocktails. This shit got so wild that riot police marched in. Police helicopters flew in to intercept while they were probably blasting Ride of the Valkyries. In the end, the travelers had caused 50,000 pounds of damage, and 235 people were arrested. That's a lot. This event would become known as the Battle of Yeoman's Bridge. Yes, it has a name. After the battle, the travelers were hereby banned from future editions of the Glastonbury Festival.
Your revolution is over, Mr. Lebowski. Condolences! The bums lost! The bums will always lose!
Number 9. Pearl Jam at Roskilde 2000. Roskilde is one of the biggest and longest running music festivals in all of Europe. It welcomes some 100,000 attendees each year to see a variety of different acts, from death metal bands to the world's biggest pop stars. But in the year 2000, it was also the place of one of music's biggest tragedies. Pearl Jam were in the middle of a headlining set to about 50,000 people when things went horribly wrong. By all reports, the crowd was extremely tight, with people crushed together and struggling to breathe, and on top of that, it had rained earlier, making the ground more unstable. In one section of the crowd in particular, a number of people ended up collapsing, leading to 9 people dying of asphyxiation and another 26 people being taken to the hospital. Pearl Jam were notified of the tragedy and stopped their show, urging the audience to step back and make space, with frontman Eddie Vedder visibly distraught. This incident sparked a major discussion on festival security and led to improvements not only to the Roskilde Festival, but to most festivals. The tragedy is still remembered today by the Roskilde Festival and Pearl Jam, who've gone through great lengths to honor those that were lost. Major respect to them for that one. Well, that was depressing. Let's talk about something funny. Number 8, Blue Ridge Rock Fest. Anyone familiar with my channel definitely knows this story already. But for those who don't know, Blue Ridge Rock Fest is one of the dumbest clusterfucks of a festival I've ever seen, and is quite possibly the worst music festival of all of 2023. Held at Virginia International Raceway, Blue Ridge Rock Fest promised to be 4 fun-filled days, with rock and metal fans celebrating to many of the top bands currently out there. But what those fans didn't know is this festival was run by a major douchebag. What fans ended up being treated to was a cesspit of lines that took several hours to get through, price gouging, lack of water, bathrooms that hadn't been cleaned for days, which isn't fun, but that all was just the tip of the shitberg that was to be Blue Ridge. During the first day, a crazy windstorm blitzkrieged the festival with torrential rain and 65-mile-an-hour winds. Blue Ridge issued an evacuation notice but had nothing to handle such a storm. The place fans were officially told to take shelter in was just the side of the road where the shuttle pickup had been. Just outside next to trees with no cover during the storm. All of the attendees were required to park in a lot that was miles away from the festival and were forced to take the shuttles to the actual grounds, of which there were few. Thus, fans ended up being stuck in that location for around 4 hours with no shelter or food or water and just being drenched by the storm. The following day, bands did play, but many didn't get to see them, with many ticket holders being turned away at the festival gates by security, stating that the festival was again going to be evacuated. Except that it wasn't. Anyone who made it in early got to see all of the bands that those who were turned away were told were canceled. On what was to be the third day of a 4-day festival, Blue Ridge posted on social media officially canceling the rest of the festival. Fans were told it was due to weather concerns, but the truth was Blue Ridge was even worse behind the scenes than what the fans saw. After it happened, people online were able to piece together what actually took place. The festival treated its workers so poorly that 200 of them went on strike, which is the real reason that the festival ended up being canceled. Seems the festival promoter Jonathan Sly tried to cut every corner possible in setting up and organizing the festival, despite having promised to make improvements. This led to complete disorganization and unsafe working conditions, and to fans dealing with things like 10-hour lines to get into the festival. All that to say that this is one of the dumbest festival fuck-ups I've ever seen. When it was canceled, Blue Ridge stated they would update later about the refunds, and ever since then, they have been completely radio silent. Hashtag where in the world is John Sly? Number 7, Altamont Free Concert 1969. The Altamont Free Concert was a free one-day festival put on in California by the Rolling Stones. It was supposed to be the West Coast answer to Woodstock, which had just become a massive success, and would feature the Rolling Stones along with other popular hippie artists at the time. Sounds like a nice time, right? Well, unfortunately, the Rolling Stones forgot to plan anything when they announced this festival. They didn't have a location, or permits, or a team, or anything that would be the essential bare minimum of putting on any type of event. They basically just took an entire palm full of acid and went, yeah man, let's play a free festival, it'll be all love, man. And that was the entire organizational itinerary. The event did find a last-minute location at the Altamont Speedway, with some 300,000 dirty, smelly, unemployed hippies turning up. But due to the last-minute arrangement and lack of any actual plan, there was no food, no bathrooms, and no security. To solve the security dilemma, the Stones decided to hire a local group of peace-loving Good Samaritans known as the Hells Angels. The Angels were big fans of crime, violence, and public disorder, making them the perfect choice for security at a major hippie event. The world was about to find out what happens when you mix the fun drugs with the bad drugs. As the crowd took more acid, the angels took more crystal meth, and chaos ensued. Hippies would try to jump on stage with the bands and climb speakers for a better view, who the Hells Angels would then proceed to pull down and beat the shit out of. Things got more intense when one of the hippies ended up knocking over an angel's motorcycle. And for those of you who aren't aware, don't ever do that. They will kill you. This has been your free survival tip of the day. The chaos got so nuts that co-headliners The Grateful Dead canceled their performance, leading to 2 hours of no music playing, with nothing to do besides take more drugs and keep fighting. By the time the Rolling Stones did take the stage, it was too late. The fans were pissed off, with many screaming at the band, and the Hells Angels had no interest in calming things down either. It all finally collapsed when a man ended up being stabbed to death by one of the Angels. The man climbed a speaker to see the Stones play when he was pulled down and brutally beaten by the bikers. The man responded by pulling a gun out of his waist. Yes, someone had a gun on them at the free peace-loving hippie event. And when one of the bikers saw the gun, they repeatedly stabbed the man in the back until he died. This event was seen as one of the final nails in the coffin for the hippie movement. And in the end, another 3 people ended up dying. A couple who were accidentally run over, and a guy that drowned in an irrigation pipe. If you need that one spelled out for you, that guy was pissing and was so out of his mind on drugs that he passed out and drowned in piss. Just say no, kids. On top of that, a ton of cars were stolen or broken into, and the Altamont Raceway was banned from having music events ever again. Thanks, hippies. Number 6, Indiana State Fair 2011. Does a fair count as a festival? For the purpose of this video, we're gonna say yes, because it's hard to talk about disasters at concerts without mentioning this one. In 2011, all things were going smoothly at the Indiana State Fair, with fans excited to see country act Sugarland perform on the stage. But there had been warnings of intense weather hitting the fair right when the band were scheduled to go on. The fair discussed with the band and the authorities what should happen, and it was ultimately decided that the show would be delayed but still take place. Fans continued waiting at the stage despite conditions getting gradually worse, but they were eager to see the show and didn't want to lose their place. Winds got so bad that right when Sugarland were originally scheduled to go on, it was decided the event would be fully canceled. But before anyone was able to make that announcement, the entire stage fucking collapsed. Apparently the stage was only built as a temporary setup and wasn't able to handle such extreme winds. The collapse ended up killing 7 people, injuring another 58, and traumatizing a lot more people than that. It's a pretty horrifying image seeing a stage go down like that. Other attendees rushed in to try to help those that were trapped, and the next day of the fair was canceled so authorities could investigate. In the end, the stage collapse resulted in a $50 million settlement to the victims and their families, also leading to further regulations on outdoor concert security, and making everyone think twice about going to a Sugarland concert. Number 5, Astroworld. You probably know of this one already, but hey, let's talk about it. Astroworld was a rap and hip-hop festival that took place in Houston, Texas. Put on by rapper Travis Scott, who is known for encouraging his fans to do some hood rat shit. The event was almost guaranteed to attract a bad crowd from the start. Reports of people rushing security and breaking into the festival ran rampant, leading to a much larger crowd than was anticipated. The festival already had pretty inadequate security and safety measures to deal with the crowd they already knew was coming, and as Travis Scott's headlining set got closer, things only got worse. The crowd surged as Travis took to the stage, leading thousands of people to be crushed. People couldn't breathe and were starting to pass out everywhere, leading some to take to climbing onto the festival structure to try to call for help. People began dying in the crowd as they'd pass out and get trampled on. Emergency services did their best to save anyone they could, but they were understaffed, undertrained, and weren't prepared for a situation this bad. Medic cards tried to get through the crowd, but struggled as the headliner was still performing. Travis Scott later claimed he was unaware as to what was happening in the crowd, despite stopping the concert multiple times. People were dropping like flies and were literally being crushed to death while a shitty rapper performed on the stage, and it wasn't until his show was finally over that the totality of the situation was realized. 8 people ended up dying at the scene, including a young boy. Another 2 died later from their injuries. The events of Astroworld shocked America and are still going through the blame game of what led to it happening. Travis Scott is still haunted by the memory of it, as he made a real shit apology right after it happened, and many still hold him responsible. But I think the most tragic part of the Astroworld story was that all of those people had to listen to Travis Scott's music. Number 4, Love Parade 2010. Man, what is with peaceful loving hippie events and mass casualties? It seems to be a thing. Love Parade was a massive free event held in Duisburg, Germany. Love Parade was a massive electronic music and arts event that usually took place in open areas and attracted some 1 million visitors. But in 2010, for the first time, it was moved to a location in the city that was confined by tunnels and fences set up for the event. It was a very large space, but it wasn't made to handle 1 million people at the same time. The real problem here was a single tunnel served as the only entrance and exit to the festival, a choice that should go down as one of the stupidest decisions in history. As you might expect when 1 million people all try to travel through the same small space, the crowd became bottlenecked for hours, leading to people getting crushed and passing out. Police attempts to get control of the situation seemed to make things worse, and at one point they prevented anyone from entering or leaving the area. This was apparently to try to space out the different crowds. It didn't work. The situation became so dire that hordes of people rushed the only staircase that could be found to try to climb out of the crowd, leading to more trampling and crushing as most people were panicking at this point. But even many of the people there weren't aware of just how bad it really was. Once the crowd did eventually clear out, 21 people were found dead from asphyxiation, with reports stating another 652 people injured in total. That is a lot. The incident led to Love Parade being permanently canceled, and 10 people being taken to court over the planning of the event, with the mayor of the city eventually being recalled out of office for his part in allowing the event to take place, despite knowing of the potential dangers. If we've learned anything from this video, everyone, it's don't go to peaceful hippy-dippy love fest, or you're probably gonna die. If a festival has a cute, peaceful name, avoid it. No one ever dies at Hellfest. No one ever dies at Brutal Assault. I'm just saying, keep that in mind when planning your musical adventures. Number 3, Bull Island Festival 1972. Bull Island is yet another case of a music festival getting ruined by hippies. In 1972, a festival called the Erie Canal Soda Pop Fest was announced, featuring some of the biggest acts of the time, including Black Sabbath, Joe Cocker, Rod Stewart, and many more. The festival was billed as being bigger than Woodstock, but there was just one problem. No city official wanted it to happen. You see, the festival was announced before the organizers actually had any permits. Lawsuits were filed in order to prevent the festival from taking place, but the two promoters organizing the event remained undeterred. The promoters eventually found a location called Bull Island, which sat in between Indiana and Illinois, and was sort of considered an unregulated territory. The promoters didn't announce the new location until shortly before the festival was to take place, so authorities wouldn't have time to try to shut it down with another court case. But this last minute change also meant that there wasn't time to properly set everything up. The festival had expected some 55,000 attendees, but once it started, the crowd numbered some 200,000 dirty hippies invading this small plot of land. There were only 2 roads to get to the island, leading to traffic jams of up to 30 miles long, with many drugged out hippies just abandoning their cars and walking for miles to the festival. The festival itself was severely lacking in food, water, and bathrooms. Security for the entire event was only 3 local sheriffs who were vastly outnumbered by the crowd. Needless to say, things started fucking up immediately. The dirty, unemployed hippies set up an open-air drug market in the festival grounds, with everything from bad weed to acid laced with fertilizer to cocaine mixed with toilet cleaner out in the open for purchase. One attendee stated it was easier to buy drugs than it was to buy water. Making things worse, it rained the day before the festival, leading to an unsafe grounds and a shit atmosphere. With the high amount of drug use, lack of security, and barely any food, the food vendors who were at the festival started raising their prices, which led to many of them getting robbed and looted by the angry, starving, broke hippies. And some of these stupid drugged out dipshits even slaughtered a cow belonging to a local farmer to try to eat it. But they then discovered cows don't have pre-cooked hamburgers inside of them, and they didn't know how to turn it into food. Just say no, kids. While some of the scheduled artists did perform over the weekend, Many of the top bands, including Black Sabbath and Rod Stewart, were struggling to even get to the festival due to the traffic and were dismayed by the extremely large, chaotic crowd, leading many of them to cancel their sets. Some artists who did perform, like Cheech and Chong, were helicoptered to the stage over the swamp of hippies to perform, and even then felt unsafe and cut their show short. As we discovered earlier in this video, bands canceling their sets only gives hippies more time to take drugs and get angrier. The festival dissolved into a lawless drug island with music acts occasionally playing on the stage, but for most of the time it was boredom, starvation, and narcotics. When the crowd got word that the final headliner Rod Stewart had also canceled his performance, the peace-loving hippies burned down the main stage. In the end, the festival was an abysmal failure, with the reports of 4 deaths, mostly drug-related, lots of injuries, robberies, cars broken into and stolen entirely. The hippies made such a mess that the landowner apparently bulldozed all the trash and waste into the ground, letting nature doing the cleaning up. Man, hippies really do ruin everything, don't they? Goddamn hippies! Number 2, Woodstock 99. Woodstock was a massively successful music festival started in the 60s, which started a wave of large music festivals popping up around the world. It was known as the Mecca for hippies until it died with the end of the movement, but in 1999 it was resurrected as a tribute to the 13th anniversary of the festival. But instead of catering to old hippies, however, the lineup this time catered to the current generation, with bands like Metallica, Korn, Limp Bizkit, Kid Rock, Megadeth, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and many more on the lineup. Honestly, the lineup was pretty damn good. I would have went to this. But unlike the original Woodstock, which was largely a free and volunteer event, the organizers of Woodstock 99 had one thing at the top of their minds: greed, as it seems everything that went into planning this Woodstock had the intention of making it as miserable as possible for fans. For one, instead of being held out in a grassy field, Woodstock 99 was held on an old concrete military base, a much more brutal terrain when it comes to hot weather and drinking all day. Temperatures got up to 100 degrees, with many people collapsing from heat exhaustion. Water was price gouged, and the festival made sure no one brought in any outside food or water. Attendees were left with the vibe that the festival didn't give a fuck about them, and was happy to let them suffer if it meant squeezing more money from their pockets. Vendors were price gouging the shit out of their food, bathrooms were few and disgusting as usual, and as the music got wilder, so did the crowd. Reports say that when bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit hit the stage, the crowds got particularly rabid. Limp Bizkit especially got a lot of the blame for this nonsense. As the band performed their hit song Break Stuff, the audience began to break stuff. People were pissed off at the shit treatment from the festival and started ripping down infrastructure and crowd surfing on plywood. Which honestly does look fun as shit, I can't lie. The Limp Bizkit set seems to be where the real chaos started as fans became increasingly belligerent and violent toward the actual festival. A big wall that was meant as an art exhibit for peace was ripped down and destroyed by the drunk Kid Rock fans. The water stations that were there were ripped apart and destroyed, flooding a lot of the grounds, with porta potties also getting mixed into the mess. That is not mud, you guys. By the last day of Woodstock 99, the crowd had fully morphed into a pack of methed out rabid hyenas, with only destruction and chaos on their minds. Vendor booths and facilities were being looted and destroyed, and among the crowd, worse things were taking place. Many reports of different kinds of assault were officially filed once the festival ended. You see, in the hippie generation at Woodstock, many women would walk around with their tits out or fully naked for a sense of freedom. But this wasn't the flower people of 1969. This was a festival full of drugged out, raging douchebags who had devolved further into madness than they normally were. In this rabid environment, a group of peace activists passed out free candles to the crowd that were meant to serve as a vigil to honor victims of gun violence. The Woodstock barbarians, however, saw them as torches for an angry mob, and proceeded to burn down parts of the festival. Tents, trucks, and piles of garbage were all set on fire. During the final band's performances, multiple fires were burning across the festival grounds, with one burning down a large speaker tower. Once the music was over, the violence grew. The fans broke open ATMs, destroyed and looted everything they could. People were attacking each other, men were assaulting women, The situation got so bad that 700 police in riot gear were called in to stop the chaos. All in all, about 44 people ended up being arrested, while the number of injuries is somewhere in the thousands. Woodstock 99 for a long time was regarded as the worst festival disaster of all time for many years afterward. The festival organizers blamed the bands, especially Limp Bizkit frontman Fred Durst, claiming he incited the crowd to riot. The media blamed it on the crowd being angry white men, and many blamed the festival organizers for clearly being solely focused on their own greed. Personally, I do hold the organizers mostly responsible for this colossal disaster, so fuck those guys. And now we've arrived to the worst music festival disaster of all time. Number 1, Fyre Fest. You know this one, I know you know this one, but my god is it hilarious and deserving of the top spot. Fyre Fest, this is hard to talk about without laughing. Fyre Fest was supposed to be the most luxurious, one-of-a-kind, clout-chasing shit can of a music festival for pathetic influencers. Sold as taking place on a private island, once owned by holy prophet Pablo Escobar, Fyre Fest was to feature the hottest models, top guests, private mansions, yacht parties with Instagram influencers, celebrity chefs, and a lineup of some of the most popular artists of the day, most of whom I've never fucking heard of. Now, Fyre Fest isn't the most violent music festival to ever happen, and nobody died. But the reason it takes the number 1 spot on this list is because of how much of a complete fucking scam it was from the very beginning. Started by con man entrepreneur Billy McFarland with his business partner, rapper, and fellow idiot Ja Rule, who give me the impression that they came up with this plan after blowing each other. The plan was to sell this as the most luxurious festival ever, only for the rich trust fund kids and brain-dead influencer people. But what the two ended up having was just an idea for a major operation with zero idea or resources to actually make it happen. The fraudsters had spent what money they did have on having the biggest influencers on Instagram post an orange square. Kendall Jenner was reportedly paid $250,000 just for this one single post. The world is stupid. The team put together an ad announcing the festival, featuring a bunch of hot women on a beach, and tickets were sold. But there were a few problems in the way. For one, the entire festival had been built up through fraud, with Billy lying to raise funds from one investor to pay off another one. Also, the festival only had 8 weeks to plan, design, build, and properly set up the festival, which was practically impossible to do on normal ground. I mean, shit, planning and carrying out a wedding in 8 weeks is extremely difficult. This was supposed to be a top, luxurious, one-of-a-kind festival for rich people, and this was to happen on a secluded island with zero infrastructure at all. Also, none of the announced artists had been paid yet, which is kind of a problem. On top of all that, the festival was kicked off the island it had announced and had to find a new location. They settled on what was an open construction yard on a much larger public island, which they then photoshopped to make it look like it was still its own private island. As the date got closer, Billy the dipshit was getting pressed for payments he couldn't afford, while still promising a lavish festival he had no possible way of delivering. A normal person would probably consider canceling the damn thing at this point, but not Billy. Never once being deterred, Billy continued digging his hole deeper and deeper, never announcing or saying anything, until finally guests started arriving on the island. After paying an exorbitant amount on tickets that included a private jet to the island, luxury villas, free drinks, and celebrity food, guests were flown in on a dinky commuter plane, then picked up on old school buses to the festival grounds. The luxury villas were actually old hurricane tents that were soaking wet. Most of the infrastructure wasn't built, and all of the artists ended up canceling after having not been paid. Guest luggage was delivered by being thrown off of a cargo truck, as everyone was told to just fend for themselves. Billy, who was actually still there for some reason, did try to calm the crowd and prevent the situation from getting worse, but as the sun set, the attendees all realized they were stranded on this island for the night with no real shelter, and their luxury vacation had just turned into Lord of the Flies. I'm honestly amazed Billy even addressed them and didn't just disappear. Luckily, he didn't do this to the hippie generation or they would have eaten him. The clusterfuck of zero organization or plan for anything led to a chaos chaotic situation. All flights were already booked out, meaning guests had no way of getting home and just had to wait on the island, with the only food being this now legendary cheese sandwich. This picture went viral as most of the population started hearing about Fyre Fest and what a hilarious fuck up it was. The sheer absurdity of the whole event and the idea of a bunch of spoiled influencers stranded on an island was hilarious to most people, leading Fyre Fest to becoming a household name for all the wrong reasons. Billy was eventually sentenced to 6 years in prison and had to forfeit $26 million, though he was being sued for a hell of a lot more than that. Billy succeeded in making himself one of the biggest clowns in the world, and now he wouldn't even be able to open a lemonade stand without being laughed at by everyone. Ja Rule immediately broke up with Billy and legally got away with his part in the whole event, but is also still just seen as a joke nowadays. Fyre Fest became legendary for its fantastically fraudulent fuck-up, leading to 2 official documentaries and countless skits and jokes about it, with it now being widely known as the worst festival of all time. And that is my list for the 10 worst music festival disasters of all time. All of these are excellent examples of what not to do should you put your own festival together. So if you're a festival promoter who's watching this video, try to avoid all of these mistakes, or you might end up in my next video, the 20 worst festival disasters of all time. I'm watching you. But what do you guys think of these incidents? Do you know of any other festival disasters that I didn't mention here? Let me know in the comments below. For more from me, check out my band Dark Insanity on Instagram and here on the channel. We've just recorded our first demo. We're going to have our songs coming out real soon. We have a show coming up December 8th at the Rainbow Bar and Grill in Hollywood, and we'll be playing the Tulminator Festival next year in Slovenia. If you liked the video, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and maybe even becoming a member if you like. Shout out to my Rockstar members for helping support the channel. You guys are awesome. Anyway, that's it for now, and I'll see you on the next video.